This is old Nan. I'm going to go ahead since you took so long, Marie.
Go ahead.
This is old And I'm joined tonight with Marie Hill and Ashley Bach, the Iron Underneath, with Steffi to come along any minute. So thank you for coming. And tonight we're going to talk about prophecy. Marie, y'all go ahead.
Well, this is really just a kind of a brainstorming venture where we're just going to thrash out ideas about all the different prophecies, because as we know, George R. Martin can throw us some loops. So there must be prophecies that are real and prophecies that are throwing us in the wrong direction. And it's kind of just a moment we can get together, thrash out ideas and figure out what's real and where George is trying to trick us, because he's a tricky kind of guy. Would you like to say a few words, Ashley?
Hi, I'm Ashley at the Iron Underneath. I'm sorry about that if you just heard a big cat fight. 3 of them just attacked each other. So excuse that. It's really nice to be here as always. It's one of my favorite things to do. So thank you so much for having me. It's really fun for me because I've been looking at patch face for a while, and it's so hard to interpret what patch face says, that it's all riddles, and it reminds me a bit of Shakespeare though. So that's how I'm trying to look at it. And also from uses certain words like dance, usually means fighting, shadows, the others, or they could mean Melisandre's shadow babies, and I think they do in one of his prophecies. I also think that he's one of the few that we can actually count on, that his prophecies may not be actual prophecies, they might be from a source of some kind, some source that God, I just don't know if that's a true God or not. People are just representations of a God that a lot of people believe in, necessarily mean the God exists. So I'll just leave it there because I don't know if I want to jump into a patch face rhyme right at this very moment, but I'll let Marie talk first. And
jump in with a stallion that mounts the world. Now George rides as swift as the wind rides, and behind him his calisar covers the earth, men without number, with their axe shining in their hands like blades of rades of grass. Fierce as a storm this prince will be. His enemies will tremble before him, and their wives will weep tears of blood and rend their flesh in grief. The bells in his hair will sing his coming, and the milkmen in their stone tents will fear his name. The old woman trembled and looked at Danny, almost as if she were afraid. The prince is riding, and he shall be the stallion who mounts the world. Now, when I look at this, I think to myself, the old woman looked at Danny almost as if she were afraid, and the Dothraki are patriarchal society, so is she seeing Danny's son, or is she seeing Danny and she's too frightened to say because they're surrounded by the Khals? And also, is the wise Dothraki woman prophesying a son, or that Daenerys is the dragon who will mount the world? Did she see a vision of Daenerys gaining some sort of victory over all the Khals like we've seen in season 6? Is that going to be in the Winds of Winter, where Dany defeats all the Khals and she gains the Khalasar? We know in the show Dany burns the leaders, but in the books, will she do the same and bring the Khals to heel? I don't know whether she'll go through the whole fire thing, because George kind of said in the books that's a one-off when she birthed the dragons with Khal Drogo's funeral pie. So I don't know how she's going to do that, but obviously I do think she's going to have to conquer the Khals. And because is she the stallion who mounts the world? And also fierce as a storm, the old crone said. And Dany is known as Stormborn. But storms also don't last, and perhaps Dany won't either. Storms kind of burn themselves out, or they rush through, create havoc, and then just as quickly disperse. And is that kind of what's going to happen with Dany? She'll create all this chaos, and she's a conqueror. What Dario said in season 6, you're a conqueror, Daenerys Stormborn, not a ruler. You can't see her sitting there and just being happy to sit on a throne all the time and listen to petitions. So I kind of wondered if that was she's the stallion that mounts the world. I'll let you ladies discuss.
When you were saying that, that her being the actual one that them being afraid of, that Danny being the stallion that mounts the world, Drogon being the stallion. This, I think, what you're meaning is that Drogon will be, which would be one of her children, her oldest, her biggest, largest child. You don't know, but what he was the first one to hatch. I don't know. That's just speculation there. Don't nobody get upset. But like you say, they are a patriarchal society, and they're not going. Those women are not going to tell those calls that there's a woman that could best them. I just can't see them doing that. No wonder the woman was scared.
I tend to agree with Nan a little bit about it being Drogon, because of the fact that Khal Drogo was her sun and stars, and she was the moon, his moon. And as far as the myths go, birth of the dragons hatching from the moon, it seems like their child, the stallion who mounts the world, that's how I see it. From now on, a storm that brings a lot of death, because gods are coming into play and warring. And so I think that I see it as Drogon, and the fact that Mary Mazdur birthed Drogon as just as much as Daenerys did, in my mind. I think that that's also something coming out of a Shadowbinder as well. Mazdur. The magic is definitely there. I don't know about really being about Daenerys or Drogon being anything good for the world. I don't see them either one of them being good for the world. I don't see how even they could kill the others without killing a ton of other people at the same time. So I feel that way about them, but they basically are.
Well, there's a couple of things I want to readdress to the Dany one. I look at Dany as you say, as being a conqueror and no ruler. And then I look at Robert, and I see that Dany is the female equivalent to Robert Baratheon. She is going to be a good conqueror, but I do not see her being a very great ruler. And then another thing, when you think about, hey, Steffi,
hey,
when you think about all of the other stuff, there was more than 3 deaths that paid for the lives of the dragons. There was 4. Mary Mazdur died, Khal Drogo died, the baby and the horse all died in that black magic ceremony. And for all of those deaths, she got herself to live through the fire and the 3 dragons to live. So that's 4 lives for 4 deaths. 4 deaths for 4 lives. So that's it. And welcome, Steffi. Let you say hello. Huh?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Cynthia, Marie, Ash. How's everyone doing?
You were talking about also, I don't know if you wanted, while we're on this subject, is that the seas would dry up. Are you wanting to go into that? And she says, when the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, when the seas go dry and the mountains blow in the wind like leaves, when your womb quickens again and you bear a living child, then will he return and not before. It's implying that maybe a reincarnation of Drogo or whatever, because she hasn't had a baby yet. Her womb hasn't quickened. She's already got the dragons. So, that's something that's left up in the air as a question mark there. And that's all I had.
Yeah, I kind of think that always, in my bid I did, I see that as a prophecy. I know that some don't, but I do. The sun rises in the west and sets in the east. To me, screams Jon Snow and his resurrection, because Jon is big in the books, and he's going to be in the end game. whereas Quentin Martell, to me, dies early and he makes no impact on Daenerys' story. So I just can't see that being Quentin Martell. So I think it is Jon. And as for the seas drying up, that could be where the sea freezes. I remember reading in medieval times that the Thames and the sea between France, I'm terrible at geography, between France and England actually froze, and people could walk on it.
Right.
It was it was kind of like a long night, and people could actually walk on the sea. So I'm thinking, is she seeing that as dry? But it's actually just ice because the others bring the cold, and will the seas actually freeze over? It won't in the show, but it might in the books. And that's where I get that from. And as for mountains falling, well, in the books, the pyramids of Meereen, I think, fall. That could be the mountains that Mirri Maz Duur is seeing in Meereen. Or it could be the actual mountain Sir Robert Strong falling. And if my own theory about him is the only way to kill him is wildfire. If anyone can get their hands on wildfire and shoot arrows at him, by the time he tries to get out of his armour, he'll just burn up. And just like we saw in Blood Raven, his ashes will scatter to the winds. So it's different interpretations, but I always kind of see that as not Mirri Maz Duur being spiteful, but as a prophecy. And also later, I think in Dance with Dragons, doesn't Dany bleed or something, or she has a miscarriage or something?
Yeah, she bleeds. Some people think it's because of the pale mare and that she contracted it, or she had a miscarriage with his star. And then another one's just she got on her period. So it depends on what you believe. But I think it was just her getting on her period. I don't think his star was able to, right? Because I don't even remember them quite frequently having sex in the books. I think it was just that one time, and it was just a ceremonial, that's it. But yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that, well, she says herself in that chapter, but I don't even know how long it's been. It's been since the last one. Then she thinks about as during the prophecy, and if maybe can I have children again? Would be true. Again, she was also sick. I don't know if it was what it was. It was just she was sick. She was sick to her stomach, but I think she started her period. I really do. I think that's what it was. And that really says to me that she's gonna quickening, be able to bear a living child. And I have a big alchemical thing for this that would take an hour for me to explain, but it's just the fact that the representation of the moon and the representation of a sun king, the sun king, the son of the sun, the next god figure, if you will, the alchemical marriage of it's called the Great Alchemical Marriage, and it's a step in alchemy where when the sun and the moon, they create a child called the Rubus, which is the next god on earth. So I don't know if they'll actually birth a child or if that part will be different. I think it will. I don't think they're going to have a child at all. I really can't tell why this is happening, except for that maybe the blue will blow in the wind like leaves, because they won't be there. Everything will be covered in flames. So if they were ash, they could blow in the wind like leaves. Or it could be books. He's Sir Robert Strong. He's not the mountain anymore. It refers to the mountain myself.
Well, I tend to agree with Steffie. I think it was probably that with trauma from the birth of her first child, her only child, that she probably hadn't had a period or been regular or right and all. And I think that the bleeding in there was her starting her period again for the first time in probably since the birth of that last child. So That's all I got to say about that. But they told me to do work on something, and I forgot what it was. But I found out I got into doing a bunch of them, so I come up with one I'd like to discuss. It's not my favorite subject, but I think this is a good prophecy, and it's a very interesting one. And I think Marie knows which one I'm going to do here. Sorry, y'all, I forgot which one it was. If I'm stepping on your toes, Steffie, tell me. The one about Jaime Lannister resting his head on the weirwood stump. Am I good with that one? Okay, it says in his dreams he's at home, he's in the rock, and that he has both hands. And he sees that he is surrounded by a dozen tall figures in robes that hide their faces, with spears in their hands. They're driving down the deep into the rock. And he sees Tywin, Cersei, and Joffrey. And he wonders what this place is. And he's told it's your place. Voice, the voice of all the Lannisters since Lan the Clever. The others turn to leave, although he begs them not to leave him alone in the dark. Then Brienne appears, naked in chains, and begs him to cut the chains, which he does, and they both wield flaming swords. Now this says, there's only one flaming sword. This is saying there's going to be two at least with them two. And, in the New Age of Heroes, there may be many flaming swords. Or it could just be reference to Valyrian steel. It says that she claims she swore to keep him safe, and then cries out, sword. Know that is referencing to Lady Stoneheart. Then he hears Cersei's voice, cries out in the darkness, will burn so long as you live, and when they die, so must you. After she leaves, 6 riders come near her, and this is the part you got to consider. Oswell Went, John Derry, Lewin Martell, Gerald Hightower, Arthur Dayne, and Rhaegar Targaryen. Arthur Dayne replies that we all swore oaths, and then the other King's Guard accused him of failing his duty, and Rhaegar tells him he had trusted him to keep his wife and children safe. And then his flame starts going out once he hears that, until only Brienne's sword is burning, and the ghosts are rushing towards him. He screams and wakes up. Brienne lives. To me that just makes me think that she's going to outlive him, and that he and her will fight together against the others at some point in time, and that she will outlive him. And as far as the flame going on, as long as Jaime lives, you all know I don't have a very high opinion of Jaime Lannister. If there is a redemption arc with his character in this story, I feel like this is a premonition or prophecy.
Yeah, I'm interested in this part, in that what screams at me is Cersei is standing with Tywin. So that tells me Cersei dies before Jaime. And when he sees his sword, she tells him that his sword is going to go, and he sees his sword dying. Will he die too? Or is this a case of them both being resurrected? If, as Nan said, there's 2 flaming swords here, and we know that Beric Dondarrion can light a sword up with his blood because he's been resurrected by R'hllor. Because I've always wondered about Rob's words in season 6, and I'm not sure if it's in the book. You probably know this, Steffi, when he says to Jaime Lannister, perhaps you were captured by a boy, you're something rather by a boy, perhaps you'll be killed by a boy. And I've always wondered if that boy will be Bran, especially if Jaime says those words, the things I do for love, in Bran's hearing. It may not be that Bran will kill him, but if Bran tells Arya that he remembers who pushes him from that window, because in the books, Bloodraven blocks his memory from remembering who pushes him from that window. He protects Jaime a bit, or he's just trying to get Bran to think on other things. But I kind of wondered about the two swords myself. Like, Brienne's sword doesn't go out, so does that mean death for Jaime? Brienne lives? Because I actually do think Jaime's going to die, and because in a show we keep seeing him go back to that book, and he keeps looking at that book with the empty page. That's his. So someone is going to write in that book to me, and that screams Brienne. And will she become like a Queen's Guard to Queen Sansa at the end? That's my thoughts on it anyway. But he's kind of it kind of reminds me of a death dream, because Jon had a similar dream where he goes down in the crypts of Winterfell and he tells Samwell that he's terrified. And I thought, when I read that, I thought Jon's going to die. And then I thought, oh no, he can't die, because he's Jon Snow and he's the hero and he's got to live. Well, we found out in the Dance with Dragons he does die. So I thought then that was a death dream. And then Jaime's kind of having a similar dream where he's going down into the depths. And so I'm wondering if he dies too, and maybe he's either resurrected or he just dies and Brienne
I'll
lives.
just quickly jump in, because I think this is so interesting. I love this one. All about this, and you just said it, that's so parallel with Jon's crypt dream. Even say that this is your place to Jaime. Dream, not my place. And so that the blue flames just the flames will burn so long as you live. So and one of them becomes a white, but is kind of like a Benjen Cold Hands white, or version of Cold Hands white, where he said, I'm still going to fight for the living. Or does it mean that one of them's going to die? Or does it mean that one of them's on the side of blue and one of them's on the side of red? It seems to me that Brienne is in a position right now where she has to either sacrifice herself and Pod, or she has to go kill Jaime. These swords with them together, and the 6 says to me that this is Jaime's redemption arc. I mean, Jon became boy and became the man erected. So I think it will happen with Jaime. The show.
Yeah, for me, it almost seems like as long as Brienne has the sword, he's sort of living. Like, I don't know if Jaime's gonna die 100%. I want him to. I think he's a horrible person and justice should seek him out. But for me, it kind of seems like when Cersei, I agree with Marie as well, that as long as, since Cersei and Tywin are in the dream, they're already dead. So I think it's right to assume that he doesn't kill Cersei. It's someone else that does. But as for the voices, like, it's just weird. Like, I've always pictured this in Casterly Rock in the dungeons, and Cersei is actually the one who put him there for a reason. What that reason is, I don't know. But I always had that feeling.
I love that, because I was just thinking that today when I was looking over this stuff, that if Euron's going to go for anybody in the show, even maybe in the books, but don't you think he might go after Cersei? I mean, she's kind of his female counterpart. She can be smart, but she can be taken advantage of in 2 seconds by a sexy guy. And who knows? I mean, maybe Euron, she actually has to put Jaime the Rock because of Euron arriving. It's just a thought that I had when you were talking, Steffi, because it made me think of Euron. And I think, because I know it's at the Rock, at least the Rock, and it seems like it is. It's in those caves with the water. So, and doesn't he have both hands in the dream? Or is that the other dream? The dream. He doesn't have both hands in this dream. This is the weirwood stump dream. Also be being sent by someone
Yeah,
else.
because it's the weirwood, it could be sent by Blood Raven and Bran. Because you never know which one. I can never quite tell if when Blood Raven's alive, whether it's BR or Bran that's sending these dreams out. But I had a thought, now it's going, oh no. Oh, that's right. I really believe that Jaime's redemption arc will be that he will join Jon in fighting the Night King. He will believe Brienne, that the Night King is there and is real, even in the books. In the books, it's going to be slightly different because there's that break with Cersei that we're not getting in the show. And so he may not come back to save Cersei, and she will hold that against him. So if he joins Jon, I can actually see her imprisoning Jaime as a traitor, because he'll probably keep the Lannister forces, and if she recaptures him, because she may be queen for longer than what we think. Because even though she can make stupid decisions, she's also cunning. So I'm just wondering, will she capture Jaime and imprison him in Casterly Rock if she stays queen? If she's queen, does that mean that Euron will get to be king because of that Forsaken chapter? It's kind of peculiar, that woman standing next to him with a fire coming out from her fingers. We know Cersei used wildfire in season 6. You think she'll do that in the books?
I think that Cersei is that one that is seen with Euron in the Forsaken chapter. In my opinion, anyway, I do think that. And yes, I agree that Cersei's dead. That she dies before him. And I do think that Brienne will outlive him. But the two flames, what you were saying was very interesting also, in that. Does Cersei take him captive in Casterly Rock? When you were talking that, I was thinking, well, is it going to take Brienne to go get him out of there? If that's the case, that's one way of looking at it. But in the end, I do think that he will wind up going north to fight, and there he will have to, I still think, meet Bran and face Bran. And I think I think he'll die in the end. I do think he will die. But I hope that Brienne lives. And if this is foreshadowing, if this is prophecy, then it looks to me, in my poor interpretation of it, will outlive him in the end. And I thought it was just so amazing, the way that it described all of his ghosts of his past just coming in and rushing up into him. And it was like, at the time that all of these ghosts were made face is the time, and were scaring the heck out of him, that is the time that his flame started going out. His flame actually started dying when he was confronted with the ghost, and then probably for the first time in many years thought with any shame or regret on any of his
Makaro's
actions.
prophecy was between Tyrion and him, and it's in A Dance with Dragons. So I'm just going to quote it right now, just so everybody knows what we're talking about. It seemed to him that the prophecy that drove the Red Priests had room for just one hero. A second Targaryen would only serve to confuse them. Have you seen these others in your fires? He asked. Only their shadows, Makoro said. One most of all, a tall and twisted thing with one black eye and 10 long arms, sailing on a sea of blood. For me personally, it's weird that Makoro picks out Euron, who I assume is Euron, because the 10 long arms would be a kraken or like an octopus kind of thing. And sailing on a sea of blood would definitely mean, with the Winds of Winter chapter pre-release, he's basically sacrificing while he's sailing. So he's basically sailing on a sea of blood. He's making sacrifices to the drowned god, which later, actually, Makaro talks to Victarion about, on how their god is actually a demon god, And he says, if you were to, Victorian later tells him, if you were to say that to the people on my ship, they cut out your tongue. And surprise, surprise, Euron's, the people on Euron's ship do all have their tongues cut out. But what confuses me the most is when he talks about the others, he mentions that he sees Euron the most. Why does he see Euron as such a pivotal person when you have things going on like Hardhome, for example, which in the show was like phenomenal. Like if that's the way George R. R. Martin wanted to write it in the book, like that's mind-blowing. So it's weird that Makara would choose Euron as a more adversary to Westeros in the realm compared to the Night's
I've always
King.
thought that Euron is working for someone, because somewhere in the books, I can't remember where, doesn't he say that he has to find a bride that's worthy of him? So who's he referring to when he says him? And we know he's travelled around to all different places. And I'm wondering, would he have met the Night King and been able to communicate with him because he maybe have been given special gifts by Bloodraven? Because I do think Bloodraven touched Euron when he was a child and then for some reason left him. But it may have opened up some sort of third eye in Euron, because Nan says before, he does have that red eye, which reminds me of like Bloodraven, the weirwood trees and that kind of thing, and also Ghost. So there is something, connection between Euron and Bloodraven that didn't quite work, and I think he went towards Bran, and that may be because Bran is more malleable, or he thinks Bran is. Bloodraven is kind of a tricky guy to get to know, because we never quite understand in the books what side he's actually on. I'm always wondering why the children are on the opposite side of the wall, the wrong side, with the others. But it could be that they were sent there because they were punished and they're trying to undo what they did. But yeah, Euron is a tricky one to try and pin down, because he's got that red eye, he's got the shade of the evening which he drinks, and just where has he been, who has he met, and who's he working for?
That one really interests me too. I mean, these are all so amazing. I think that, like I said before, I think that Euron has definitely been Bloodraven teach him a little bit and then kick him out or let him go. And I think that's what they were referring to in the show so badly when Bloodraven says to Bran, "Don't stay under too long or you might drown." Talking about drowning and then I thought patch face, okay, but I thought maybe it was more about Euron, about don't stay under too long like Euron did. Now think you can, conquer the world and take it over. So I think he'd spent time with Bloodraven for sure.
Well, I got a couple of thoughts from listening to you ladies. Now this is Makara prophesying about Euron, and it seems that Victorian, correct me if I'm wrong, is asking him if he sees any signs of the others, and he says he only sees the shadows. So him seeing the shadows of the others, could that possibly be talking about Euron is a shadow agent of the others? Does that make sense? Euron being a shadow agent of the others. And I agree, that possibly Bloodraven did have some early influence on him. And I think that he possibly found out just how bad a guy he really is when he saw what he did to his brothers, and how he tormented people, and he had no compassion. So he may have stopped his training, or he may have given him just enough to make him dangerous. Exactly what I think happened. He taught him just enough to make him dangerous, to feed that fuel for craving for knowledge. And he would crave that knowledge until he sailed the globe trying to find the secrets of all the knowledge that he could find. think that, yes, he could be out there looking for a wife for the Night's King. That's a good thought there, girls. But I do think that Euron is a shadow agent of the others. Ladies?
Yeah, I agree with you, Nan. I do. I think that he's after Dany for other reasons than just to marry her for himself. I think he's after her to bring her north.
I could add something to this. I'm just going to do a quick quote instead of reading everything that I have. This is from A Dance with Dragons, Bran Chapter 3. And it's from Jojen to Bran. It is given to a few to drink of that green fountain while still in mortal flesh, to hear the whisperings of the leaves and to see as the trees see, as the gods see, said Jojen. Most are not so blessed. The gods gave me only green genes. My task was to get you here. My part in this is done. So it's almost like instead of it being one sect of the children of the forest, I've mentioned this to you guys before, but it seems like there's two, one that is enslaved and told what to do, and then there's another which has free will. And it seems to me that the others are abusing that power and allowing people who are not worthy of the gift, who do not understand their role, to have more power than what they should, which is, I think, what Euron has right now. He has more power than he should, and the others are feeding him all this information. And like I mentioned in a previous video we also did, that the shade of the evening is basically like a connection to the others. So that's my thoughts. And that's the reason why Euron's also still alive, because he doesn't want to be mortal. He wants to be like the others in some form, to be immortal in his knowledge, such as Bran would be if he were to die and enter
Well, I think
the weirwood
before
net.
we went on air, Ashley and Nan were talking about the weirwood and the ironwood trees and the difference between them. Did you want to go on about that while we're on this subject? Because it was really interesting, and I don't think the chat heard what we were saying, but did you want to say a few words, Ashley? Because you've looked into it really in depth. I mean, this is lady's really in depth when she gets into her stuff, people, so pay attention just as much as Steffie and Nan. Thanks, everyone.
So sweet. I about the trees, I'd done a video on the trees with the inky blue leaves that are, I think, ironwood trees. I'm not sure, but had said she'd watched my video on it, and I find these trees just fascinating because they are, I mean, they are obviously the polar opposite of the weirwoods. They have blue leaves, the weirwoods have red. They're white, black barked, and give shade of the evening, where the weirwoods sacrifice, and then you get weirwood paste probably mixed with a bit of the sacrifice of the, at least the blood sacrifice. So these trees grow outside of the House of the Undying, and they also, Daenerys describes them when she goes into the House of the Undying, and she says that dark underneath the trees. And so there's a lot of darkness associated with them. They're obviously, like I said, that, you know, in every world there's an opposite to everything. So I think these have to be the opposites to the weirwoods. There's also cedarwood that Arya talks about. Different, or if it's the wood just called by a different name, because there's cedarwood also that she describes as cedarwood, but it's just this hard dark wood in the House of the House of Black and White. Also, one door is with a weirwood face on it, and the one door is white on it. All their chairs are black and white, and the backs of the chairs have a face on them, and they're interchangeable faces on the backs of the chairs as well inside. And the Lion of Night, I believe, is made out of the same wood. The door to the crypts of Winterfell is made out of this wood, and so is the stump that Ned Stark executed Garrett Night's Watch at the very beginning. The stump where they, at Winterfell, where they is an ironwood stump. So it's interesting to me. And I realize at the end of Dance of Dragons, I remember when goes up beyond the wall with Leathers and a couple other people, they start noticing more faces in the trees, and now they're on all kinds of different trees. It doesn't even matter what it is. But who's put these faces in trees? Because they even have a big ironwood face in the House of Black and White. They're really, really interesting, and root system, but the roots grow on top of the soil. So it's more like the weirwood roots going under and being kind of more like the Yggdrasil tree, where there's a mother tree, or a mother tree, a father tree, and the rest are clones. I don't know if the ironwoods are like this, but everywhere. There's one in the Godswood of Winterfell.
I was kind of going along with that thought too, because didn't you say the ironwoods are black and the weirwoods are white, which tells me that there might be opposites, just as in reality there's the others and there's the people who are opposite. So I'm wondering if one tree is being used for the others and the weirwoods is being used to save humanity, and so that's Blood Ravens being able to work through the weirwoods to give people dreams to help save humanity, while the other, what Euron's drinking, is for the others. And that brings up again, because Dany drinks that stuff. So is all the vision she has in House of the Undying real, or is some of it real, some of it not? Because maybe that's not coming from Bloodraven, that may be coming from the others. So yeah, that kind of brings a question mark, doesn't it, about my video? I have to rethink.
Yeah, it really does. Because, also in the House of the Undying, she sees that beating heart, which is the same. We were talking about the direwolf in the snow with the stag antler through it that pups. So that heart is blue with corruption, just like that wolf. Well, like the others too. So they're just really, I said in the video is that I thought they might be the opposite to the weirwoods and maybe be turned at like white trees, or if they're actually just another force that's existed the whole time, which is makes more sense.
Yeah, it also makes more sense in that it would give the others a way of controlling humanity, which they might not have because they can't speak our language and we can't talk theirs. I mean, I think it was a Bran the Builder that learnt the language of the children of the forest in the end, because they have their kind of language is the springs and the trees blowing in the wind in amongst the leaves and all that kind. He learnt to speak it, but the others' language is kind of different. And is this their way of trying to control humanity to serve them rather than to serve humanity? Because there's got to be an opposite. The others must also have something, because George Martin goes out of his way to say that they're intelligent creatures, elegant, intelligent, so that they're. The only trouble is, though, he doesn't really expand in the books on who the others is. They're mentioned. We know that we see them as an enemy. But I kind of think they must be kind of infiltrating. Just like in the Second World War, you had double agents infiltrating into the agents to double cross them. Is this they're using this tree to infiltrate amongst humanity and to gather an army to serve them, and they've really got a real captain in Euron.
There's that tree, and then there's also two scenes actually, or two passages where in the books where I think one's in A Storm of Swords and one's in A Dance of Dragons, where Jon is going to the Fist of the First Men, and the other one is in this next and one of the rangings, I can't remember when the next one is, but both times he passes in ice, and when he brushes against it, it flashes green. And there's weirwoods encased in ice above the wall, but there's also these ironwood trees with faces on them. So I do think that there's can look through. It's like a way that they can see seers. That's always how I saw it. And I guess that means also, you know, it's the stump that you behead criminals on in the north. It's the door of the crypts of Winterfell. So it definitely, the interesting thing about these trees too, I'll just keep talking, is that they all, he calls them sentinels sometimes, the pine trees, and sometimes he says the trees are as sentinels. So I think there's a double meaning. So I wonder if this is the double meaning. If this, then that means there is one in the Winterfell Godswood. That means everything that's been said or done in that Godswood's been seen by through the ironwood trees, like the Night's King.
As far as the new faces in the trees, let me get this straight. You're saying, isn't it Theon that sees new faces in the trees, ladies? I think it is, isn't it? God in the woods there at Winterfell.
Yeah, Theon sees
right,
them, and John sees them, and Theon
yeah.
sees them. You're right. Theon sees them too.
Yes. So they're getting, these new faces are being put out there on not just the weirwood trees, but all of the trees. And another point I would like to go into about this is you know, it probably all boils down to the old war against good and evil, the battle between good and evil, which is never really won. It just keeps being fought. And it's you know, in the house of black and white, you've got all the gods there. You've got the weirwoods as well as what we're calling ironwood. And those trees seem to be polar opposites of each other in a lot of ways, but in some ways they're very much like each other. And if you're using by the color coding, red of the weirwood is representing possibly fire, and the blue of the ironwood representing the ice. Go for it, Steffie.
This is to Marie's point about Euron gathering an army. John brings this up in one of his chapters. This is John to himself. The Night's Watch takes no part of what I said, but another replied, Stannis fights for the realm, the Ironmen for thralls and plunder. So it's weird, and then it goes on to also explain later with John, the haunted forest, John thought ruefully, the drowned forest more like. So it's almost like they also have a claim on that land as well. That it wasn't just the Iron Islands that they had originally either, which helps Marie's point and everyone else.
And I was thinking about the placement of the trees as well. Another thing, you know, Westeros seems to have more weirwoods, or is it a geographical thing? And does it just seem like the eastern part of the world has more of the ironwood, the wood that that takes in the light, eats the light? You know, they're totally opposites on total different spans of the world, but they're still both of each interspersed throughout both sides of the world. It's like if we're looking at it like we've all been talking about, as the ironwood is representing the others and the weirwoods is representing children, or which is supposed to be, who is supposed to be the good guys in all of this? And where does one begin and the other one end and the other one begin?
I think that comes to, there's no black and white characters. They're all human. What's that Faulkner quote? Loves to quote about how people are shades of gray, and that it's about the conflict with itself. So I think the heroes gotta be, but John follows the hero so perfectly, yet so does Bran, so does Danny. Even, I mean, Jamie does as an anti-hero. So good guys, I think that as far as spirituality goes, when a dragon comes up in spirituality, it has to be killed before you can get to the next spiritual level of your life and of your thought pattern. So it brings you up further to a further higher spiritual level when you slay the dragon. So, and esoterically. So to me, I think the blue is more the side of the good. If I can say good, because things are blue with corruption. So I think maybe that means something good being corrupted by blue, which might mean represents the others, but it also represents good things too. Just the good people who haven't let themselves be made bad. Like, I think the story of Ned is so incredibly important because the fact that he never lost his honor, especially if you read about the great empire of the Dawn. Everybody there, supposedly on the right side of the Five Forts, started behaving in ways of avarice, greed, jealousy, wanting each other's lands, being adulterous, things like that. And then the Lion of Night and his demons descended upon everyone. So I think honor, even though it seems like it's not so important, I think, or that it's just such a small thing, that, oh, just people have honor, that's all that brings the others. I don't think it's all that brings the others, but I think it's a huge part of what maybe it's a difference of whether the people who have the honor keep their honor. That's Steffi. This is the one where Black, and he's talking to Jon Snow about home. Malagorn says, Lord Snow, who will lead this ranging? And Jon says, are you offering yourself, sir? And Malagorn says, do I look so foolish? And Patchface, in the middle of it all, says, I will lead it to the sea and out again. Under the waves we will ride seahorses, and mermaids will blow seashells to announce our coming. Oh, oh, oh. So when I delved into this for so long, and what frustrating to me was the mermaids blowing seashells, because with sigils and people. So we will march into the sea and out again. The march part, the Lord of the Marches was the Lord of the Tides was House Valerion, and the last one left is a 6-year-old boy, a true-born Valerion, but the bastard of House Valerion is Orane Waters, who is now calling himself or Lord of the March. And so Lord of the Waters is his last name. They've always been admirals, grand admirals, most of the time, at least for the Targaryens. So I think the Marches, he's the one who he looks a lot like Rhaegar. Cersei really liked him. She gave him all kinds of money, and he built up the royal fleet. And then when she was in the cells by the High Sparrow, when she was imprisoned, he took off with the royal fleet. He's fabulous. And he is the Lord of the Marches. So I think he's going to lead ships up. They're going to lead. We will march into the sea and out again. So marching, following Orion Waters and his ships that will go under the waves, which is under the watch of the Flint's sigil, the Flint's on Widow's watch. See, but they won't see them, because to the sea and out again under the waves will ride seahorses. So under the watchful eyes of the Flints, whose sigil is eyes and waves, they will ride seahorses, and mermaids will blow seashells to announce their coming. They'll ride seahorses. Not quite sure about that part, but I think it has something to do with ships that are being built. Mermaids will blow seashells to announce our coming. I got really confused about that part until Littlefinger's new sigil has become a mermaid blowing a seashell. So I think that it's the Orion Waters will pass by Dragonstone, where Sir Roland Storm is Castellan of right now. Castellan, he's there with Loras Tyrell, quite a few other people. They're mining obsidian, so they could very well pick them up, or they have so much obsidian, and Gendry how to turn that into Valerian steel. So Patchface, he very well could be. I don't know who Patchface is. I just think this is the only thing who Patchface might be, is just that he, in ancient times, they always revered the court actors and the fools much, but actors were like royalty and fools were important. So what the things they said were to, and maybe he is related to the Valerians in some way, not the Valerians. I don't know, because I think Patchface is they picked him up in Volantis, but I don't know where he came from before that. Maybe he is a bastard of a noble family, but everything else he said is pretty. He usually prophesizes things really well.
That's a good thought. I was asking about the Patchface being a Valerian, because what you said there, that was very interesting.
Drives me bonkers, but I absolutely know that he is going to be one of the real visions, because it's kind of like Nostradamus quadrilles that he's written Patchface in, which tells me that George R. Martin is seriously considering Patchface as one of the major prophecies that is real, that is true. I just can't decipher them. So I'm going to, the only thing I can decipher from Patchface with my own mind is that everything that was before is going to change and never will be again. So the bastards will rise, and those who are lords will be driven low. And we can kind of see that shifting in the balance of Westeros now, where Gendry is coming forth, Jon is rising. He's now king in the north, and he was a bastard, even though we know that he isn't. So I can kind of see the bastards rising, and all those highborns are being brought low. Like Sansa kind of went through the whole thing of being brought low before she's risen again. So that's the only thing I can get from Patchface. But I'm going to definitely rewind this and listen to it and make notes of what Ashley just said. Now, do you have anything that you want to go on with the prophecy that you've studied?
I was just going to say to Ashley, I like the sigil reference. I thought that was very cool. And Steffi, I thought that had some other thoughts on Makoro. What I wanted to ask you about Makoro is him burning his arm when he gets the stone the grayscale type stuff. And in reference, you know what we were talking about the other day with reference to, is the grayscale possibly biological to be used on the others?
The grayscale, Victorian didn't have grayscale. He actually blocked with his hand, and then the person he was facing on the boat cut his hand open so bad that it got infected. So whether it was grayscale or not, I don't think so. But if it is used as biological warfare, it would make sense to me personally.
Yeah, thank you for clearing that up. I knew it was something there. But yeah, I kind of think that it could be used. Marie, Ashley, what are y'all's thoughts?
I think that talking last time about this, I think I said that it might be, since I've been perusing the world of Ice and Fire for looking at this stuff, I think that it might be because on all these strange places we've never been, like across this, is the places that have people into twisted black things, and it seems like trying to make dragons or something. Or it is, there's bizarre stuff going on in other places in the world. So I wonder if grayscale didn't come out of something like that, some kind of way of trying to breed dragons, and then this is what they ended up with, and just somewhere where they didn't have to look at them or deal with what they'd done. But these men are in horrible pain. So really, to me, it seems like, as far as grayscale goes, that he might just actually bring it to Westeros. So I wonder if that makes it pretty. Jorah might do the same thing, but you know, I almost wonder if grayscale, I mean, Val did say, Mance Raider's wife, she did say that, see, that this is death. She was talking about Shireen, saying, this girl is dead and you can't see it, her mother can't see it, but she's dead. So maybe it's something that the children of the forest did while trying to make the others too. I don't know. Seems like it's more made by fire. They could harness it. They could make it a weapon. Maybe that's the stone giants.
Yep, that's a good point. And also for the Val to mention it to me, it must have hit them on the other side of the wall, the grayscale. So it's not just a thing that's in Westeros or in the other parts of the east, because Shireen catches it, I think, when doesn't someone from Dawn send Shireen a gift, and I always thought they deliberately infected it because he's a Baratheon, and Shireen holds it to her face. Well, that could be show, I could be getting muddled up in show and book because it's hard to differentiate them. But I always wondered with Val, for her to have that knowledge, it must have hit the wildlings at some point, and they dealt with it. And I should think they dealt with it rather harshly, and anyone who caught it probably they killed, and to stop it from spreading. So for her to have that knowledge that it's dead, I just kind of think that, I think they dealt with it harshly and they killed him.
Yeah, I think Val mentions that her sister, someone did kill her. And doesn't Gilly say that too?
Gilly's sister.
Gilly said that, Val said it in the books. I can't remember. I'm confused too, Steffie.
In the show. Maybe Steffie can straighten us out.
Steffie.
Okay, in the show, supposedly, Stannis goes to the docks and he meets like a captain of a ship, I guess, of like a trading galley or whatever, and that person makes a little doll with a Baratheon outfit on it, so he gives it to Shireen, and that's how she contracts it without knowing it, and then the crew dies, and then they find out that Shireen has it, and then he brings in all the maesters and all that stuff. It was like a very touching scene. It was like my favorite Stannis scene ever.
Really sweet.
But then in the books, I don't think they ever mention how Shireen contracted it in the books at all. Maybe someone in the chat, I'm sure Tony probably knows if it was ever mentioned in the books. I don't think it was, though. Yeah, I don't think it was
They
mentioned.
say that she was born with it. So
the thing with grayscale, even the Ironborn and everything out, like any cold, damp climate, there's a risk of getting grayscale. So for the Ironborn, you get, like, you basically have to drown, or they throw you off and you die. But it's interesting for the wildlings because they don't have a lot of, I would say, sea. I think it's more sea related than it is like rivers and anything like that, or like lakes. It doesn't seem associated with that. It seems more of a sea disease. So yeah, but Tony is right. It was a curse that was brought down on like a group of people who were then flooded, and then they all got it. He's correct.
Garen's curse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what.
Way to go, girls.
Yeah, thanks, Steffi. Let's see.
But
we're going to have to do this again, aren't we?
But it also seems that like other areas also get it, and it records even further back than the time that of Garian's curse. It all, like, people's names make it seem like they've had grayscale forever. Like there's a tourney that happens at the High Towers, and they try to go after one of the High Tower heirs, the females, but because this person is called Gray something, they block him out of the castle, which is also what happened during the Great Plague. So it's almost like history has little drops of it happening beforehand and them protecting themselves against it. So
I got a question. Maybe y'all or someone in the chat can answer it. When you're talking about gray as being a water thing, and you look at the reeds, and if my understanding of the reeds area is swampy, is that more of a brackish swamp, or is it more of a freshwater swamp? And is that possibly the association with it being called gray water watch?
It's marshes, so it seems like brackish water, but water mixed in. I think this is going to be a big deal when the others come down, and the salt.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm trying to find where I wrote all that down, but there's something about that other prophecy, or I don't know if it was a dream. I think it was a dream of Daenerys's, where she sees herself as Rhaegar riding on the back of a dragon, and black ice an army in black ice armor getting to the Trident. So that always made me wonder if it was Jon Snow's army, or if it was the others, with the way that the colors bounce off of them, if they looked black, or what it was. But somehow I think that they can't cross the Trident. So Greywater Watch seems like it's its own little of some kind. Almost feels like Avalon to me, like Greywater Watch, or something like thing that's been lost in the mists. You know, they always say nobody can find the castle.
Yeah, it's constantly moving, the Greywater Watch. So it has to have some mystical ability in order to continuously move that little island.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen Greywater Watch in the movie, in the show, but I doubt we're going to get there. I doubt we're even going to see Howland Reed. I've got a feeling they're going to move on and leave him behind. But I'll move on to another one now that I did. I'll read it out here. This is Daenerys. Yet when she slept that night, she dreamt a dragon dream again. Viserys was not in it this time. There was only her and the dragon. Its scales were black as night, wet and slick with blood. Her blood, Dany sensed. Its eyes were full of molten magma, and when it opened its mouth, the flame came roaring out in a hot jet. She could hear it singing to her. She opened her arms to the fire, embraced it, let it swallow her whole, let it cleanse her and temper her and scour her clean. She could feel her flesh sear and blacken and slough away, could feel her blood boil and turn to steam, and yet there was no pain. She felt strong and new and fierce. And I'll put here, again, I think this is Jon, as she calls it, the dragon, and not her dragon, and that he's as black as night. And I think in the show, I'm not quite sure in the books, but in the show, Jon tells Robb, black was always my colour. Now, could this be a Nissa dream, or again, is Dany witnessing a vision that involves a volcano exploding, and Jon is there with her in the form of the dragon? Because that kind of leapt out at me, that she keeps seeing this dragon, the dragon, and that's what makes me think it's not one of her. It's kind of like the dragon, and I think, is that symbolic of Jon as the dragon rather than an actual dragon? Like Jon doesn't have an actual dragon, but is she seeing the dragon as Jon, not in physical form, but in a metaphorical, in a Targaryen kind of way, that there is another Targaryen out there who can have a dragon, and to me, one of the dragons is Rhaegal. But do you think this could be a Nissa moment, or is she seeing a kind of, because I do wonder if there is volcanoes spread all over Westeros, and one of the things that Shireen's, which is a take on Patch Phase, is that she sees kind of like ashes going up, or snow going up, which could be ashes from a volcano and stuff like that, and the sea boiling, which could also be a volcano, and all the obsidian that's in Dragonstone, and the heat from the Winterfell, that heats Winterfell, could be, the hot springs could be from a volcano. So it might not just be Valyria that will face a doom. Is Westeros facing a doom too? And also that might bring a long night too, because when you have a big explosion like that, it's like a nuclear weapon that goes off and will blacken out the sun, so it looks like a long night. That may also help defeat the others. I know I'm bringing a lot in here, so I'll let you ladies talk about it.
Thanks, Marie. That was really great. I like your interpretation of it. I think that lately I've been thinking now, when we hear Daenerys again, that it is Jon. Even that time that Summer saw a dragon, well, a winged serpent, I think it was, flying over Winterfell in like a Clash of Kings, I think it was. So that also was Jon leaving for the Wall. I don't know, but I think definitely that is Jon. I think the sea's boiling with blood is going to happen because of Euron. I don't know, because it said that the long night comes after winters, or 2 consecutive winters, small summer, which we had the false spring, so this will be the 3rd winter. Might be the one that's another doom, where it's either or freezing water.
I'm assuming you're talking about the one where it's just between her and the dragon. There's no Rhaegar, no trident, no nothing, right?
Yeah, there's no Rhaegar in this one. This is one where it's just she sees the dragon, and to me that represents Jon. I'm talking about one of Daenerys' dreams that she has, and I think the dragon, when she calls it the dragon and it's black, it represents Jon, not an actual dragon, but that Jon is a Targaryen, and it's trying to tell her that she has a Targaryen on the other side of the world, because I think Jon's dragon is Rhaegal. And then I brought up about that perhaps Westeros could be sitting on a fault line, and there could be volcanoes, and that explains some of Patchface's words where the snow goes up. That could be the ash, and the water is boiling. Could be volcano go into the water, and what was it? People dancing. It's kind of got me too. Like, there is a lot of things where it says shadows dancing. When I was looking at the prophecies, I don't know how many times I came across the word shadow, shadow, shadow. Melisandre makes shadow beings, shadows dancing.
I think the shadows have come to stay. The Baratheons are almost wiped out for Gendry. And
the Starks are basically wiped out already. With what Steffie said the other night. And what she said, she had it right dead on. When she said, we were talking about, are the Starks going to be extinct when the dire wolves leave? And I think she had it right. They basically are. He'd been dead once, and you don't know if he's going to be able to, if he is going to have any children or not, or live to have children. All that's left with the girls, you don't know about Bran, so.
Sadly, maybe that's the bittersweet ending, that Bran ends up there, or Jon ends up there together, or Jon ends up there alone. Ends with two boys, two brothers together. So we change that.
Okay, I'll jump in now. It kind of seems, okay, this prophecy happens before she hatches the eggs. So it kind of seems like either A, she's prophesizing about a dream, like she's like about hatching the eggs and the Drogon finally being born, or it kind of seems to me like when I read it, that she's actually at Winterfell in the pond there, because it says that the fire cleanses her, but the thing is, it almost seems like she's in water. Like, you remember that bathing scene in the show where she just goes into the scalding hot water? Now, when I read that, it kind of brings me to the other prophecy that Bran has of the pregnant woman in Winterfell, and her saying, "Oh, I hope like you get all the revenge and whatever." Like, she kind of wishes her baby to have the best life as a Stark. That kind of seems like what's happening here. Either that, or it's in reference to Rhaego and her unborn child, which could be the same situation, but it invades Dothraki.
I did find one of the Daenerys' dreams, and the one I found was that her thighs were slick with blood. She closed her eyes and whimpered, as if in answer. There was a hideous ripping sound and the crackling of some great fire. When she looked again, Viserys was gone. Great columns of flame rose up all around, and in their midst was a dragon. It turned its great head slowly. When its molten eyes found her, she woke shaking and covered with a fine sheen of sweat. She had never been so afraid. Is this foretelling of her dragon's coming? Or is this some dragon spirit that's looking her in the eye and telling her that maybe you are how her brother always said, you're going to wake the dragon. Maybe this is her waking as a dragon. Does that make sense?
I kind of took it to be something trying to tell her that Jon is there, because it's called she calls it the dragon and not one of her dragons. Like, she's got the 3 dragon ends, but she differentiates it and says the dragon, and it kind of, when she first sees it in a dream, it kind of frightens her, which tells me that she's not used to it. And I'm just kind of wondering if it's a metaphor for Jon Snow Targaryen, and that's trying to tell her that there is another Targaryen in the world. He's not an actual dragon, but what she's seeing is Jon as a Targaryen, that she's got a relative out there. Because I think Jon's dragon is going to be Rhaegal. Or maybe there is a dragon in Winterfell, we don't know. I mean, I'm saying Volcanus, but maybe there kind of is a dragon in Winterfell. That's one of the theories out there. I don't really subscribe to it, but it's out there.
Well, Bran saw a dragon in Winterfell when it was on fire, when he was warped into summer. Okay, so if that's the case, then, you know, there's possibility that there's a dragon beneath Winterfell. And, you know, as far as her finding, her dreaming of Jon Snow or having a premonition or prophecy of him associated with Jon Snow was the blue rose in the wall, coming out of a pink cinch in the wall when she was in the after the throne room. She left in the one.
Keep muting and unmuting myself. Yeah, that was definitely Jon Snow with the House of Leon dying. When she walks when she walks in this show, she looks straight across and you can see the blue rose. And of course, in the books is that blue rose in the chink of eyes. That's in the sweet smelling. So to me, that's definitely Jon. But I just wondered if this is another reference to Jon, and her dreams are trying to tell her that there is another Targaryen out there. That's just the point I was making. Now, you ladies tell us when you're tired and you've had enough, because we can always make a part 2. But does anybody else have another theory they want to go on with?
I think we should definitely do a part 2, because we just, maybe even 3, because we've just touched a few of the prophecies. You know, I mean, how long it would take if we were going to try to do all of them. I think we're going to try to do the ones that are more significant, if that's what y'all want, or do you want to try to cover all of them? Y'all have to tell me.
I have another 3 to go, so, and I don't know how many you ladies covered during the video, but I only got one of mine done. So it's up to you. I think we should make a part 2.
Yeah, I agree, because in looking, I found like 15 or so prophecies right off the bat, you know, just going through them, you know. I just talked about the Jamie, but we've covered a lot of subjects going around each of these things. We've covered a lot of different areas in that, and I do think that we should have a part 2 at least. I do thank you, girls. You're always a blessing to have, and like I said, give us some comments out there. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you want to hear in the future, and I'll let y'all talk. Say your goodbyes.
Thank you, Marie and Nan, again for having me on with you. I always love being on with you. It's a pleasure. And I definitely think this needs a part 2 and maybe even 3. There's so many great prophecies. So fun to go over them with such incredible ladies. So let's do a part 2. I only got through 1 also, Steffie. So idea. So come see me at the Iron Underneath, but watch for me here more often than not. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you all so much for having me too, Nan.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Monero, thank you for that precious poem. Keep it up. All of you in the chat, we love it. I wish we had made this public and announced it. We did not, and it's our fault. Great, merry, happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa, happy everything. God bless and keep all of you. Goodbye.